Thank you. Good evening and welcome to the November 10th, 2025 Eugene City Council work session. Thank you for joining us in this hybrid meeting format. For work sessions like this one, there is no opportunity for public comment, and those wishing to access the meeting can do so by watching the live stream available on our website, the broadcast on Comcast Channel 21, or by calling into one of the phone numbers listed for this meeting on the public webcasts and meetings materials page of the City of Eugene website. In case of a medical emergency, an automated external defibrillator, an AED, is located on the counter behind staff, located to your left or on the west side of this room. And in case of an emergency evacuation, emergency exits are through the double doors located at the back of the room, and the doors to the patio can also be used as needed. Thank you all again for joining us this evening. I now call the November 10th, 2025 work session of the Eugene City Council to order. And I will turn it over to our city manager to introduce our first topic, which is a work session on airport terminal renovation and expansion.
Thank you, Mayor, and I want to welcome our airport director, Catherine Stevens, here to the table. Super grateful that she could be here tonight on pretty short notice to do this important work session on an update on what's happening at the Eugene Airport, in particular, our terminal renovation and expansion project. So not only is she an amazing airport director, but she is also the best acronym creator, because now we have huge T-Rex as a project, and who can't love that? So Catherine's going to talk about where we stand on project delivery, funding, and next steps. And with that, I'll hand it over to you.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you, Mayor Knutson, Council President Evans, and councilors for having me here tonight. I very much appreciate your time. I'm Catherine Stevens, as Sarah said. I'm the director at the Eugene Airport, and I'm going to give you an update tonight on our airport renovation and expansion project, dubbed EUG TREX or T-Rex. Projects that are receiving federal funding again, and construction status, also what the next steps will be. And this update will also provide a detailed financial analysis of the Concourse C expansion and the launch of the Liftoff EUG feasibility study. So that will be actually in a different PowerPoint that we'll transition to after this one. So just a little bit of background. Since 2019, passenger numbers at EUG have increased 41%, and this includes pulling approximately 14% of our local passengers back from driving north to Portland International Airport. Even so, 29% of passengers in our regional community are making that drive, and with the terminal facility at EUG over capacity, this is unlikely to change until additional gates are added. So you can see that from this chart, passenger numbers have been flat over the past couple of years, and this is an indicator of our facility capacity constraints. So here's an update on our airport capital improvement program. As part of the capital improvement program, several projects have been completed or are under construction. And for this presentation, I will focus on the projects utilizing federal funding sources, which thankfully we have been able to obtain this year after working through some challenges with the new grant agreement language. This summer's Concourse A asphalt apron rehabilitation is substantially complete. That's the picture you see here. The project focused on rehabilitating the existing asphalt apron, including approximately 500,000 square feet of terminal ramp rehab and strengthening of the subgrade in key areas to improve safety and efficiency. The federal dollars utilized for this project are approximately $7 million, with our local share making up an additional 6.25% of that funding. And this fall's 34 Right drainage improvements wetland mitigation project includes drainage improvements with the addition of a pump station, which you see there going in, and 0.42 acres of wetland mitigation within the 34 runway protection zone. You'll remember that that project initially was going to about 4 times as much wetlands area, and through some really great engineering, we were able to reduce that number and come up with some pretty simple solutions of cleaning out existing storm drains and things like that. So a great solution there, and also some cost savings. The federal dollars utilized for this project are approximately $1.2 million, with our local share of 6.25% contributing the remainder. And probably the most exciting for everybody, me included, is the Concourse A expansion project. We'll be starting this spring, adding approximately 7,000 square feet to an underutilized connector bridge as central shared seating space for the Concourse A gates. This expansion allows for construction of an ADA emergency exit lift, improving accessibility for all passengers, and upgrades to existing restrooms, enhancing safety and overall passenger experience with an added economic benefit of accommodating more passengers, which means job creation and increased airport revenue. This project was postponed, then revived with the reestablishment of federal bill funding allocations. The federal dollars utilized for this project are approximately $18 million, with our local share of 6.25% making up the balance. And the new possible funding sources, because you've got to have a silver lining, so the delay in this project actually allowed for the next Connect Oregon grant process to come forward. So we'll be applying for that. We are also hopefully seeking some congressionally directed spending as well. So the design of our outbound baggage expansion project is substantially complete. This project includes the design and construction of the building facilities to support a new fully inline explosives detection system. We received approximately $1.4 million from a TSA grant for the design phase. And the TSA will enter into what's called an Other Transaction Authority Agreement, or otherwise known as an OTA agreement, for allowable construction costs. New possible funding sources include an FAA Airport Terminal Program grant, a Connect Oregon grant, or congressionally directed spending. And the construction timeline is dependent on those additional funding resources, which may also need to include PFC-backed bond funding. The Concourse C expansion, financial analysis. Last time I talked with you, we had done all the studies showing that we needed to expand the terminal building and add gates to be able to keep up with the current and future demand. Then we took a deep dive on the financials and got some sticker shock. So I just wanted to show this to you and then also talk about potential solutions in the future. So airport staff, along with consultants specializing in airport finance and capital development, have identified nearly half of the needed funding for the EUG TREX shown in the orange section. These are the enabling projects needed ahead of the Concourse C build-out. Funding sources include federal grants, passenger facility charges, airport revenue, and bond funding backed by PFCs. The project total cost shows the maximum amount of utilizing a 30-year bond at a total of more than $208 million. So that's what we know we can cover through traditional funding means and bond funding. This section in the green shows a portion of the EUG TREX for which funding has not yet been identified. This includes a total of approximately $240 million needed in additional, that's in addition to the $208 million that was already has identified funding. So why the big price tag, close to $500 million? Construction costs in our region are extraordinarily high, with the total project cost noted here being quite daunting. Without the availability of additional bond funding capacity, work on the ticket counter expansion, the C Concourse expansion, and the bag claim expansion projects could not happen until another 30 years from now, once that initial bond in the orange section is expired. So waiting 30 years to build out the C Concourse group of projects is really untenable for the airport, as we already are over capacity. Passenger numbers are projected to more than double over the next 15 years, and without major facility expansion, that demand, and most importantly, the economic development that goes with that demand, will go elsewhere. So as a result, airport staff have been exploring non-traditional sources of funding, which could include additional state and federal grant funding, congressionally directed spending, public-private partnerships, naming rights, and benefactor funding. To further explore these options, airport staff are launching the Liftoff EUG feasibility study, which will help gauge which of these options is viable. And I'd like to walk you through that presentation now, which will be rolled out to community audiences later this week. So bear with me while I switch presentations. There, got it. Okay, good, good. All right. I love the technology. Okay, so I'm just going to run through this presentation just like I'll be running through it for a bunch of different community audiences. So I'll start off with an introduction. I'm Catherine Stevens, the Airport Director at Eugene. I'm here to talk about the future of the Eugene Airport. EUG is a major contributor to our regional economy now, but its impact could be even greater. So you all already know the convenience of the Eugene Airport over driving to Portland, dealing with the traffic, the more expensive parking up there. Eugene is easy and accessible, just a short walk from the parking lots, quick and friendly security, and you get home a lot faster after a long day of travel. The savings from competitive airfares, parking rates, and no need to drive north and stay at a hotel. Eugene Airport serves a large region, including a 5-county area. 1.8 million passengers travel through the Eugene Airport each year, and 71% of the passengers in our local region choose to fly local, and there's an opportunity for almost 30% more to make that same choice to fly EUG. So let's talk about some of our current challenges. We reached airline gate capacity in May of 2021. PDX offers more direct flights, and our airline partners would like to add more flights at EUG. However, our terminal is at capacity, which makes it difficult to add new destinations. Our facility needs to grow to better serve our region, both residents and visitors. But considering all of the benefits, imagine if the airport was even better. Plans are underway to better serve our community in the near future and for many years to come. First, by expanding our current Concourse A passenger waiting area, which, as you heard, is underway this spring. Then, with the addition of the new C concourse and supporting infrastructure, we will essentially double the size and the capacity at EUG. This will allow for more commercial flights and better charter facilities for the Ducks, Beavers, and visiting athletics teams. We will also expand our parking and surface lots, which are not shown on this slide. The planned expansion will accommodate more nonstop flights. So this map shows a look at the current cities served by nonstop routes at the Eugene Airport. And here are just some of the nonstop routes possible with the terminal expansion. Atlanta, Orlando, Boston, Hawaii. These are the routes that are most in demand. I'd love to hear any routes that you're interested in. Perhaps we can take a look at bringing those in as well. The greater capacity in our terminal facility will mean more nonstop flights to more destinations, a dedicated charter facility perfect for sports teams and special events, and greater convenience for passengers. And now that you've seen potential nonstop destinations, let's look at how flying out of EUG instead of driving to PDX for a flight has less environmental impact. Right now, 29% of passengers in our region drive up to Portland to fly. That's nearly 250,000 trips to Portland each year. If an expanded Eugene Airport can persuade those passengers to fly local, it will keep more than 450 cars off of I-5 each day driving to PDX, eliminating 12,500 miles of driving from our roads daily. And this will save a net 5 metric tons of CO2 pollution a day, or over 3,200 tons per year. Let's compare the Eugene Airport's growth forecast with and without the new additions. Number of passengers are projected to more than double over the next 15 years. Without an airport expansion, demand and the economic benefit that comes from that demand will go elsewhere. Nationwide, airports support 12.8 million jobs. Let's take a look at the Eugene Airport's impact on local jobs and the broader economy, and how this proposal will impact that metric. Eugene Airport currently supports more than 10,000 local jobs, both directly and indirectly. Personal income, business revenue, and local purchases are all substantial. $43 million a year is generated in state and local tax revenues. EUG creates a regional economic impact of $1.6 billion. And with the expansion, you can see the economic impact would be substantial. Jobs, personal income, business income, and tax revenues more than double. Regional economic impact grows to $3.6 billion. The bottom line, the sooner we build C Concourse, the sooner we can generate an additional $2 billion a year in economic impact, totaling $3.6 billion a year to our local economy. We've identified nearly half of the needed funding. However, with traditional bonds backed by passenger facility charges, we will have to wait for 30 years before being able to begin work on Concourse C and its supporting infrastructure. Waiting that long is really unacceptable. So we are determined to find new and non-traditional funding sources. Instead of spending 30 years waiting to build the C Concourse through traditional means, let's do it now and generate an additional $60 billion in economic impact. Let's begin realizing the benefits now. Let's capture otherwise lost future income. And let's gain more jobs, more destinations, and a better travel experience for everyone. We want to hear from you about how you experience EUG. Please take this 10-minute survey. We'd like to hear from everyone who lives within our catchment area. So please feel free to share this survey with your staff, employees, friends, and family. And then there'll also be some leave behinds for these presentations as well. And then this also, the liftoffeug.com website has a lot more detail, so you are welcome to take a look at that site as well, and I am happy to answer.
Thank you, staff. Thank you for that presentation, Catherine. I will now open up the floor to council discussion. I see Councilor Groves, Councilor Evans, Councilor Zelenka.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Catherine, for this exciting presentation. My family and I use the airport frequently, and we have watched it get increasingly congested, and so I'm really happy to see that we're working on this from a number of different angles. I think it's incredibly important to our economy. A question I have, while we are also adding more capacity, are we doing anything about the drop-off and pickup area out front? Because that's still, it's at capacity, it feels right now. And it doesn't matter what the time of day is, it's always busy.
You're absolutely right, and yeah, it is, it's part of the enabling project, so it's in the orange section. And I don't know the exact timing on that yet. Frankly, we've had to slow things down a little bit because we need to be able to capture our federal funding in the bank before we can move forward with other projects. Just trying to be smart right now. So, but it is part of the enabling projects to realign that entry roadway, expand, kind of reconfigure and expand where you pull into the front curb, but also the second curb out there.
I'm glad to hear that, and I think it's smart. Make sure we have the money before we're, of course, spending it. As far as the federal funding goes, is there going to be strings attached to it like we've seen with some of our other projects?
So we, thankfully, working with the City Attorney's Office, we were able to work through a lot of those difficulties earlier this year. We are still watching any court decisions. We have some injunctive relief right now, which is great. There was also a recent court decision last week that more of a permanent in our favor, but we're monitoring that. And for that reason, until those court cases are completely adjudicated, we have to just be really smart about how we're spending our federal money, making sure we're getting those reimbursements in before we extend ourselves.
Great. That's something that still, I think, concerns a lot of us, get going on something and then have it stopped because of political ideology. One comment I did want to make, again, I've flown in and out of Eugene since the government shut down, and I just want to give a shout out to our federal employees. I didn't get the chance to see the air traffic controllers, but we were able to take off and land in one piece, so I thought that was a good sign that they're in there working. But as far as the TSA, here they are working without a paycheck. They aren't real high-paying jobs to begin with, and every one of those agents that we came in contact with had a smile on their face. They were very polite. They were helpful and even cheery as some people were going on vacations. And so I just want to commend them and say how much I personally appreciate them hanging in there under very difficult circumstances where they're worried about how they're going to feed their families. So with that, that's all I really have in the first round, but I'm super excited about this, and I look forward to more updates as we go. Thank you.
Could I just add, Mayor Newsom, I really appreciate your kind words for our federal workers. We've been in constant communication with them and trying to do some acts of kindness and things like that, providing support. But you're right, their attitude is amazingly good.
Councilor Evans.
Yeah, Catherine, thank you again for this presentation. It is incredibly informative. Since the airport is in my ward, I've been paying very close attention to the developments that have been going on and kind of what the future outlook is for our airport. So a couple of things right off the top. This chicken and egg thing where we've had an RFP out for a hotel for a number of years that I understand has not been responded to because people don't want to build hotels in the middle of nowhere. But we're not going to be the middle of nowhere for very long. And development on Highway 99 and Northwest Eugene is coming. Can you talk a little bit about that and how our dollars going into the Clear Lake development are going to help leverage development at the airport? That's one question. Question two is, I keep seeing all of these ads for Coos Bay and the other airports around. I know that Redmond has had a significant improvement in their airport facility. Medford is growing because, again, we got more flights coming in to PDX and SeaTac, and so now we're becoming like a mini hub for the rest of the Western United States. So kind of your future outlook with flights going to Boston, Atlanta, that kind of thing, really improves our connectivity over the next few years. So if you could talk a little bit about that, and then I'll cut it and we'll look for a second round after that. So
Very good. Thank you for your questions, Councilor Evans. So the hotel, we have a parcel that's set aside for a hotel. And I'm trying to think of how many years we've worked on this now. I want to say it was back to 2010. We've had 3 RFP processes and no takers each time. And each time we'd gone back, we'd gotten feedback from potential hotel developers, tweak those RFPs, put it back out, with some time that had gone by because we were trying to also hit when economic conditions were right. And so now really we are at a place where with 3 failed processes, we've also just been trying to talk directly with hotel developers to see if there's anybody we can just work with directly, of course, with the blessing of City First. Had these 3 failed processes. So as I've talked with some of these hotel developers, the tricky part is, so this is actual airport-owned land, and because it's airport-owned land, even though we have the blessing from the FAA to use it as a hotel site, we can still only do a land lease for 50 years max. So I think this was back in 2010-ish that the council approved a 30-year lease And so I've been asking these developers, okay, so if 30 years is not long enough, can we do a 50-year lease? And I'll go back to council and say, I need a 50-year lease for this hotel property. And the answer I'm still getting is their return on investment is still too far apart, even with a 50-year lease. Now, I don't think that's impossible to achieve. I think if we do find the right developer that wanted to do that, I would certainly come back and ask for a 50-year lease for that development. But and you are aware of, our issues that we've had with the ground leases out there. And in theory, what is supposed to happen at the end of the 50 years is that the improvement goes back to the airport. That has not been something that people wanted to have happen either. And so we might have to look at a different model for that as well. But the lease itself can only be 50 years, and then you would have to enter into another new lease after that. Does that answer that part of the question, I hope? Okay.
That helps a lot.
Okay. And then as far as, and could you just restate your second question for me, just briefly?
Well, we recently secured through the state additional investment in our industrial area around Clear Lake Road to invest in infrastructure for industrial development. And we have other developments that are pending, particularly the sports park and other things that will bring in more tourism dollars and more travelers. How are we planning for those developments, those collateral developments to what we're doing with the airport, to be able to expand our economic development footprint in the area and be able to, build the capacity that we need to create the kind of jobs and income that the community needs to grow and survive.
Sure. So I think this initiative, the Liftoff EUG initiative, to try and find that additional funding to build the facility that we really need as a community is one of the pieces to that puzzle. I would say you talked about a couple of the other airports in the state. So they all have quite a lot of bond funding right now, and that means debt service. So we have not had debt service to pay at the airport since 2008. That's actually really unusual for an airport of our size to not have bond funding and then therefore debt service. So in some ways that's great because we've been living within our means and doing a pay-go kind of process. But in other ways, now we've hit a wall where we cannot build basically doubling the size of the facility that we've already shown through other studies that we need to. So we do have to start looking at these other funding mechanisms. It will probably take bond funding. We know we need bond funding just to get through that first orange, section of projects. And then beyond that, we're going to have to get really creative about how we're going to build that C concourse, which is why I brought up things like, public-private partnerships, naming rights, and benefactor funding. And so when I talk about benefactor funding, I have a little pie in the sky dream that it's like using the University of Oregon model, where you have a benefactor or a group of benefactors that come, they say, we're going to build this thing for you. We can build it faster, smarter, better, cheaper, and then we'll gift it back to you. And it's a little unusual for a government entity to be saying, we'd like to look at benefactor funding for this. But as we've had a team through Terrell Group and Carrie Westland who've done a bunch of this research looking at examples out across the United States. And while we haven't seen this exact model before, we have seen pieces of it. We've seen naming rights here, and we've seen like an effort in Provo where some benefactors came together and funneled money into that airport facility. Palm Springs has been very successful with their naming rights more recently. And then we see public-private partnerships mostly in large hub airport examples, but that doesn't preclude us from pursuing that as well. I think we need to just kick the tires on all of this to see what will work, and that's what this feasibility study is about, is to see, okay, when our initial feedback that we were getting from folks was positive, but now we really need to know, would people really put their money where their mouth is and support this effort?
I have Counselor Zelenka next in the queue, and then Counselor Keating, who's just joined us in person, and Counselor Kaczynski.
Thanks. I had an important work meeting that went long, but I listened to your presentation on the way here, so I heard the whole thing. So thank you for that. And thank you for the really great job of running the airport. Ditto on the TSA workers, work without pay along with other federal workers. I agree that the concourse expansion and the other projects is a great idea, and the economic benefit and environmental benefits are really clear and substantial. And sad to hear that traditional funding pathways is probably going to take us 30 years to do, which really means never. And to be clear, the airport gets no general fund right now, not intending to get general funds. So this isn't competing against all of our other general fund programs or any of the city programs. It's all self-contained, which is quite admirable for a facility that big. And so great job on that as well. I wanted you to go a little step further, maybe put you on the spot and crystal ball a little bit more about the other sources of funding and their potential success. I mean, you've described them, but is this pie in the sky, or are there ways that we've seen other people do it? Like, you had a couple examples, but is this doable?
I truly do, and maybe that's the Pollyanna in me, but I really do think that this is doable. And one reason is I think because we're taking all the best ideas that we've picked out there that have worked, and we're putting them all together and doing them together potentially, right? And so. And then I also I hold up that University of Oregon example again, and really it's the other universities within the state as well, but that's kind of the one that everybody's familiar with, where there's been a great amount of capital investment in the university from private money. And I look at the airport as an absolute direct extension of our universities, both University of Oregon and Oregon State University, which are both within our catchment area. Without the airport, their research is not, the Knight campus couldn't function if they didn't have an airport here. Same with much of the research that's done up at Oregon State. Obviously, the athletic teams are supported through the airport being there as well. And especially with now being a part of the Big Ten, the airport's become even more important. We just got the Chicago route back, so that's a really a big deal. And as you probably all know, air service kind of comes and goes. It just depends on the different pressures out there in the airline world. But for a community of our size, we have really good air service. And I know we can have even better air service, but you saw that flat graph, we're just stuck. And airlines have done a great job of utilizing our facility even way beyond the capacity that I thought it would hold, because now instead of having the one peak period in the morning, we've got 3 peak periods during the day, and even some talk about bringing red eyes back. So it's not for, not utilizing our facility as much as we possibly can. It's just that we just can't cram any more in there. It's not even a matter of people, it's just airplane turns, right? So I think it's possible. I think it's doable, and that's what this study is all about. And we want to look at all of those different ideas and take the pulse out there and see who wants to join us in this journey.
Maybe I missed it. When do you think you'll have that study back to us?
Well, so we're launching it here tonight, and then we'll be rolling it out at the Economic Summit on Thursday, the City Club of Eugene on Friday, and then Lane County Commissioners have also asked to have a presentation. So we'll be getting in front of a bunch of different community groups, but the key is, there's this survey, and then there'll also be individual meetings with this consulting team that we've put together, going out and talking to some folks who may have done this type of work with the university before, and maybe they would consider doing this type of work with the airport. Probably 6 months is reasonable.
Counselor Keating.
Thanks, Mayor. Hi, Catherine.
Hello.
I appreciate the public-private partnership energy. Do you see at one point there could potentially be a Nike swoosh in the welcome to EUG?
Well, you said it, so.
These are cool, thank you. I'm going to regift these to my mother-in-law and my father-in-law, who are big deadheads. That's very cool. At the top of the conversation, you talked about adjusting to grant language, and those are my words, not yours. Could you expand on what you had to adjust to?
I'm going to keep an eye on Catherine here. So there was grant language that came in, the grants we needed to sign this spring, essentially, that included language that was against Oregon law, and it had to do with cooperation with ICE. So we were not able to sign our grants for a while the city attorney's office worked through some of that. The city was able to join one of the lawsuits, and then there was some injunctive relief that allowed for our attorney and the FAA attorney to agree to redlined grant agreements that took that language out. That still left us in a bit of a precarious position because we're taking a grant now that we can take, but if the injunctive relief were to go away, or if the ultimate outcome of the case were not in our favor, then we would not be able to obtain the grant funding. So we're already drawing down on 2 of the grants, and direction of staff has been to draw down as fast as you can, and our FAA partners are completely on board with that as well. And then just last week, there was a different ruling that was also would be in the favor of not allowing that language in our grant agreement.
No, I mean, that's very good. That captures it all. The government is, the federal government is appealing, so we started with the temporary restraining order. We then got kind of the permanent injunctive relief. That is now on appeal. So we continue to live in this uncertain world until we get kind of a final decision. But joining the lawsuit for exactly this reason, which was the jumping off point, was these airport conditions and trying to get this federal funding. So we've been pleased that we've had the success, but it is on appeal.
Okay, thank you.
And if I could just give a shout out to staff and to our FAA partners, because we've been on quite the roller coaster with this, and I appreciate the support from the city attorney's office and the city manager's office on this as well. So everybody cross your fingers and toes that we'll just get through this.
I appreciate the clarification, thank you. I also appreciate your prompt attention to the matter around the Secretary Noem video, and a great many of us had constituents lighten us up email and on the phones, underscoring their displeasure, and we've articulated, or at least I've articulated, I know other counselors have, our heartburn over that particular video being played at Eugene Airport, whereas other airports around the country were able to press pause or say this is, pardon the pun, a no-fly zone for playing this particular video. I just wanted to express my appreciation for the signage you put up and for the clarification around the separation between, as I understand it, TSA or federal ownership of said monitors. Could you expand on that in your decision-making and reaching the point where you put up signage indicating that the city of Eugene doesn't operate or doesn't run the video monitors that are run by the federal government at our airport?
Sure, I'm happy to walk through this again. So TSA asked us, well, actually, TSA didn't have to ask us. That was what's happening across the state, is that airports were being asked to show this video. The difference at Eugene is we don't own the video screen inside the TSA checkpoint, and that is leased TSA area. Other airports actually have screens that are maybe just outside of the screening checkpoint that they do own, and they were able to say no. But first thing I did was call the city attorney's office again and say, this is what I think. And then they agreed that I can't control the TSA video screen in their checkpoint. But, you know, we understood that people were upset. We tried to communicate that as best we could about putting up signage. We put a notice on our website, and, you know, it is what it is. Now, I would just point out, because I feel like I should, it doesn't preclude any other airport at TSA checkpoint for them to put in their own monitor and show the video. Just because if they own their own monitor, they can, at any airport, they can do that. It was just the difference between an airport-owned TV monitor or a TSA-owned TV monitor.
Thank you. Your response was a little more measured than my snarky, do we own a pair of scissors, or can we pull the plug? So thank you. If I could end my line of questioning or comments on a light note, I've been at the airport several times in the past few weeks with our new four-legged friend, and we love the natural dog relief area, without getting too graphic, on the east side of the airport. Any opportunity with this new, with this proposed airport expansion for more natural relief or play areas for the puppers?
The secure side or the public side?
It's on the public side.
The public side,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I mean, we'll be reconfiguring that whole area as each of these projects roll out, but there will always be green space because we want it to be a nice inviting space for dogs too.
Yeah, with bags. Thank you. Oh, and you asked, I don't know if you were asking council as a whole or us for any individual comments about round trips.
Oh, yeah.
There are to LAX, there are, of course, to Oakland and SFO. I don't think there are to Ontario Airport in Southern California.
It's on the list.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a possibility.
Great. Thank you very much.
Counselor Kaczynski and then Counselor Clark in round one.
Yes, thank you, and thank you for all the work you've done and the great presentation. Several of my questions have already been answered. I did want to ask in the terminal study that was looking at all the different work that needs to be done, there were several different scenarios initially for Concourse C. You talked a little bit about the sticker shock, and the numbers associated with those initial scenarios seem to be substantially less than what came out with the sort of refined alternative option. Was that difference purely stuff got more expensive, or were there sort of design choices or other pieces that went into that increased the price?
So you mean from the time we did the advanced terminal planning study to then when we did the financial analysis?
Yeah.
Costs, yeah. Costs went exponentially up. But I'd also like to answer your question with a little more detail about why that configuration was chosen. Because we've heard from some folks, like, why don't you just add on to the end of the Concourse A? We actually can't, and I don't want to get too technical, but there's a clearance to the taxiway out there that we can't violate. And so adding on to the end just really can't be done. Even if we did a reconfiguration of the current gates and tried to kind of bump out and, the existing A concourse, the cost is actually more, and you get less of what you need by remodeling the existing facility, basically. It's one thing to do what we're doing now with Concourse A to bump out that section so that people have a place to stand. But to try to reconfigure a whole bunch and add another gate here or there, it just was not going to get us where we needed to be, and it was going to be more expensive because you're jamming more stuff into an old building that actually needs some TLC. So that's how we wound up with the C concourse configuration as another pier. We looked at multiple configurations on that as well, but aircraft clearances coming in and efficiencies was the other reason why we wanted to do it as a separate pier formation, so that We didn't have aircraft potentially, eventually having to come in and wait while another aircraft pulled out and then the other one could pull in. You never want to have constraints in that way, if at all possible. So, what we have done since, getting the big sticker shock, we've started to look at, okay, well, could we only build part of Concourse C instead of maybe 8 gates? We would do 4 at first and then another 4 later. So I have anxiety around that for 2 reasons. One is only 2 years ago did we get the last jet bridge at gate A1. And that was 30 years after Concourse A was built. And that's 30 years where we didn't have revenue from that gate because there was no jet bridge there. So I don't want to see that scenario play out in a C concourse. Also, if you only build 4 gates, then the math problem changes because then you're not getting the revenue off the 8 gates, you're only getting the revenue off the 4 gates, and you're still paying for most of the facility that you have. So that's, but we're looking at, we've asked our consultants to dig in there and see if we only build 4, what does the math problem look like then?
Counselor Clark.
Thank you, Mayor. Catherine, thank you very much for the presentation. I really appreciate all of your hard work and your leadership in trying to build the airport of the future for our community. It's really exciting to see the things that are planned and the things that you're helping to shape and come to pass. It's my nature, so I'm going to wade into the dangerous end of the pool here and ask a potentially challenging question. As our airport grows and as the services and the footprint and the number of partners we take on as it grows and more of that space out there is utilized, what do we envision is the appropriate role for civilian aviation as we move forward? I may be using the wrong words. Private pilots locally that keep their planes at the
General
airport.
aviation, okay.
General, forgive me, I'm not a pilot, so, and I don't play one on TV, so I may be using the wrong words, but locally based folks that have planes that want to be able to fly them out of the area. What's the appropriate role for that group of folks in our airport's future?
Well, great question. And if you go back to the master planning process, so that was finalized in 2018, we looked at the configuration. So, our airport was initially a crosswind runway airport with a, big military use, right? And then that went away. Eventually, the crosswind went away, and we did the, 2 parallel runways. But what it left us with is general aviation kind of all over the place and commercial plopped in the middle. And that's not the ideal configuration for an airport. So as we worked through our last master planning process, we looked at, okay, we're gonna move general aviation to the north, and then we're gonna designate, this is going to be air cargo, and this is going to be commercial, and this is going to be general aviation. And it will take decades, many, many decades, to move it that direction. But that separation alone will be much better for both commercial users and general aviation users long term.
Do we anticipate a rise, an increase in general aviation use of our airport?
I mean, I think there will be some. The trend line right now doesn't show that nationwide. It actually shows general aviation still on a decline. It's expensive, right? It's expensive, not just for the equipment, but also the training. There's always going to be some level of corporate general aviation at our airport. What we have seen is a decline in just aviation for fun.
Yeah.
Because it's expensive, right?
And by the way, forgive me for interrupting, I'm asking for both of those reasons, for both the general aviation for fun and as aircraft get smaller and perhaps more affordable in time for people, and then as you're looking for creative fundraising into the future, there may be aspects of that that take place in this realm as well.
So I guess my ultimate answer to you is, of course, there's room for all aviation at the airport, other than a couple of specialized things like parachuting. No, I can't. That's not going to work at our airport. But you know, in general, most general aviation. And since you open this door, we can also talk about electric aircraft, electric vertical and takeoff aircraft. You know, all of that stuff is coming, and also in our master planning process, we have started to think about where we are going to put all of that. And then also another piece of that is how do we get the electric capacity that we need for all of that future electric aircraft activity coming. So I think there's lots. It's not that one group or another will be, you know, increasing or decreasing. I think it's just going to morph over time, and I think that's one of the more exciting things that we'll see coming is electric aircraft.
Me too, thanks, appreciate that.
We have a second round with Counselor Evans, Counselors Lincoln, Counselor Groves. I'm going to insert myself into the queue before we move on to that. And just, Catherine, I would love if you could take us back to one of the, I think, most exciting and important pieces of information you shared, but it came by pretty quickly, which was this overview of the $1.6 billion in economic activity associated with the airport, pushing up to $3.6 billion with the planned expansion. As you're talking about our airport as being our #1 economic engine, and the slide that walked through an overview of, I think, employment, and I think jobs may be related to construction and to on-site. Yes, exactly. This slide, I'm just curious if you could spend a little bit more time talking through each one of those points, because I think for the public and also in thinking about the prioritization of this kind of investment, this slide is one of the most important.
There we go. Yeah, and so this came out of, I think last time I talked to you, we had just done the economic impact study. So it seems like we've done a bunch of studies, and we have, because we really wanted to understand this challenge. You know, what we can identify what we need, but then, you know, we needed to look at the financial side of it, and then also show people why people should care, right? This is why people should care. This is really the economic health of our entire region. And when I say region, I mean our 5-county region, right? So just looking at this slide, you can see we've already got a big economic impact for our region. And by doubling the size of our facility, we essentially more than double the size of that economic impact just by the airport alone. But then if you think about, so that, remember we said this was direct and indirect, but if you think about the multiplier effect, so all of the businesses that we then support, because there's an airport that has more routes, that has more capacity to handle 29% more passengers that are currently driving to Portland, all of those things play into that economic impact. Does that answer your question?
It absolutely does. The local purchases in particular, I would love if you could say a little bit more about the assumptions that are inside of that, and then the personal income, because those changes are so significant.
They are. So that's job creation, essentially. So we double the size of our facility. So we're not talking about just City of Eugene Airport employees. You know, we have 1,200 badge holders at the airport, and they are, nearly every one of those are employed in an aviation capacity in some way. So either working for an airline, a ground handler, a concessionaire, a car rental, but also working for folks who do business out of their hangars and that kind of thing. And so by doubling, you know, the size of the facility, we're doubling the jobs, we're doubling that personal income, the revenues to businesses, both on-field and off-field. And then that purchasing power where, it's detailed all in that economic impact study that is on our website as well.
Thank you, and thank you also for pointing out that resource. My last two questions are, I think, well, I'll even say one, I'll just do one of those questions, pretty straightforward. With many of our other regional airports already having bonds in place, can you just say a little bit about how that positions our opportunities differently? If there's a bond in place in other airports, is the assumption that those bonds are continuously renewed, or that those bonds will be retiring and then other nearby airports will have less capacity? Or how do we respond to that kind of competitive environment and the assumptions?
Yeah, so we're, in Oregon, the way our airports are situated, we're not really in competition with each other. I mean, really, Eugene is more in competition with Portland than really any of the other airports, Medford, Redmond, North Bend. And I would say Redmond also has some folks that drive to Portland. Medford, not so much. North Bend actually leaks to us some. So it's not really so much, you have to kind of decouple the bond funding from that, because that's not really how we're competing with them. I just think that in some cases, they've done a good job of gaining grant funding, which we have as well, but they have enhanced that with bond funding, and we haven't, right? We've just lived within our means. There are other examples where they are leveraged to the hilt, and I don't recommend that either, so, yeah.
Thank you. Councilor Evans, round two.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Catherine, there are preliminary talks going on right now. I know that some of our folks in the chamber and other places have gone on a research venture back to North Carolina to look at what's going on between the universities in that particular corridor around Durham and places like that. So Duke, North Carolina, Wake Forest are all developing connectivity in terms of the research piece. We have a 45-minute gap between University of Oregon and OSU, and a highway, Highway 99, that connects both institutions more directly. So two things that come into mind. One is, and I've had this conversation with Jameson Auden at LTD, is public transportation to the airport from this area. Also looking at maybe a public transportation connection, and I'm thinking outside of the box now, between LTD and Corvallis Albany Transit that would link up the two to the Eugene Airport and also be able to create more traffic and more access and economic development within that context. Where are you guys at in terms of looking at that horizon and what may be coming up over the next 5 to 10 years to make some of that a reality?
Councilor Evans, do you still sit on the LTD board?
It's for 7 years?
Thought so. I don't want to speak out of turn, so could I get back to you on that?
Okay, that's fine. I mean, we're still having conversations
Yes.
about a lot of that, yeah.
Councilor Groves.
Thank you, Mayor. Couple more questions I wanted to ask is, one, I read an article a while back, and I cannot remember where I read it, but it was talking about so many of our metro airports across the country are kind of landlocked. They can't expand anymore. And that the FAA was going to start looking at that next tier of airport. And I just wanted to find out I'm sure you're more plugged in than we are, but what are your thoughts on that and what's your understanding?
Yeah, that's definitely true. I don't remember the article reference either. I can just give you examples. So first of all, you got to thank our founding fathers that created the airport where it is now, Malin Sweet, and the members of the aviation board which is part of the Chamber of Commerce way back in the late 30s and early 40s, gathered up all this land out there, 2,600 acres, and then thankfully, over the years, the land management has been good and has kept, housing from encroaching on that. So we're in good shape out there. And we also have the industrial land now adjacent. So that was really smart planning. So kudos to our community for that. There are certainly large hub airports that are landlocked and are feeling those constraints. Portland is landlocked. They've just done a major, beautiful renovation, but they actually lost gates instead of gaining gates because there's just not a place for them to put more. Seattle's in a similar circumstance, right, where they have tried to squeeze in gates everywhere they can, but there's just nowhere else for them to be able to build on that land out there. So I do think that we're going to start seeing secondary, airports playing more of a role. Certainly with our, passengers increasing 41% since 2019 and then projected to expand by another, 50% in a short time frame, we definitely are going to be picking up more of that slack, but we have to be able to do it, right? We have to have the facility to be able to do it.
Playing that out a little further, considering if this is something the FAA is looking for, and considering that our airport seems to be well-positioned for growth and expansion that will help us locally, but also the whole region, is there any chance we could see more federal money available to help us accomplish what they're wanting us to accomplish?
I would say yes, but FAA doesn't have enough funding right now for what they're trying to accomplish. So essentially, we get our federal funding, and it's completely prioritized runways, taxiways, and sometimes aprons. And apron, when I say that, is usually like a remain overnight apron, like we built a couple of years ago, so we had additional parking places for aircraft, commercial aircraft. So either Congress will need to fund the FAA at a higher amount so we can do more, have more funding. But there's only so much where we can be competitive. We saw this whole round of money that we took great advantage of through the pandemic, the CRISA and the CARES and the ARPA, and we really leveraged all of that funding, which is all used now. But then we also saw the bill funding and the infrastructure package. So, and those are competitive dollars, which we have been competitive with. But again, there's still not enough funding. There's studies that I can point you to that show there's so much airport infrastructure across the country that is just not being funded. And so we're all scrapping for those dollars.
Well, thank you for that. And then another question I had, I realize that everything we're talking about is commercial airlines, commercial transportation, and passengers. But where are we with air freight? And I think that's going to be an important part of our future as we go, providing those opportunities as we try to attract good, responsible, clean industry here.
Yeah, I mean, the great thing is we have the facility. We have a great air cargo facility. It's and we still have 2 cargo carriers that operate there. Alaska Air stopped operating cargo out of that facility during the pandemic. They still handle a little bit from their ticket counter, but not a lot anymore. Most of it's getting trucked now, and that's the trend we've seen, is more being trucked instead of being flown. But
is that because of just the price of flight? I
think it's the price of it, and also I think once you get some of those transportation lines established, then there's not really an incentive to do it a different way. But we do have the facility, and we have the land next to it, which was always intended to expand that facility. It's just a matter of the argument. So when we talk about doubling the size of our commercial airport, to support other businesses in the region that can then also spur on additional cargo capacity and use.
So in other airports you've looked at, it seems like it can kind of be a chicken and egg discussion. Do you build it and they will come, or does the market tell you you need to build it?
Well, I think we did build it and then they will come. And we've got the facility, but I think especially once Alaska Air stopped using that, it's just not really come back from that.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Counselor Clark.
Am I on there? There we go. That's well timed. My question takes right off from Councilor Grove's question. We hear a lot of information about the Port of Coos Bay being expanded. So long-term, are you planning for that level of air cargo capacity, or do we have it, or is the room there? When I suspect we will see certainly a great deal of freight expansion on rail, but I would anticipate that the expansion of the capacity at Coos Bay's port would have an impact on our airport, yes?
Yeah, it's a little apples and oranges with the North Bend Airport, because they have kind of the port capacity. They have problematic air service because of their weather. So, and we're kind of the opposite. So it's just a little different animal, I think. And they have rail lines closer to their facility as well. So it's a little disjointed. So I'm having trouble trying to correlate that for you.
You don't think we'll see a tremendous impact from their expansion of the Port Coos Bay?
That.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Any other questions from council? Not seeing any, then I will just say thank you very much for a great conversation, great discussion with council, and a lot of information. And it sounds like this will be rolling out to the community in conversations on Thursday at the Eugene Area Chamber of Commerce Economic Summit, and then on Friday at the City Club of Eugene. So at least 3 opportunities between those 2 plus KLCC for people to hear about this. And we will continue our discussions as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
With that, I will now close the November 10th, 2025 City Council work session, and we are adjourned.